Hello, I'm Key. I'm happy to be here, even happier you can join me. Today's video is about media bias. Now, all the citations will be found in the description below, but let's jump right in. Today, what we have are two artifacts. An artifact is a human-made object, event, or media that's analyzed or interpreted to explain communication phenomena. That's written in our Converging media book by John Pavlik as well as Shawn McIntosh. And these articles that I'm using to highlight will showcase bias. And according to our book, professional journalists have a professional duty to cover an issue so that all sides are presented accurately and justly. This also means that professional news reporting should not reveal a journalist's personal views. So with that in mind, we're going to use that as a focal point of my analysis, including the communications video that I mentioned, as well as Chomsky's 5 filters of the mass media machine uploaded by YouTube, by Al Jazeera on YouTube in 2017, as well as a few critical media analysis guides highlighted in our Converging media textbook. In the first article, David talks about the role of the ICE protesters in Minnesota, where Renee Good, a protester, was shot to death at the hands of an ICE agent named Jonathan Ross. However, when we get to the second article, following the aftermath, David pleads with the FBI to take proactive measures to protect Jonathan Ross from having a similar fate of Derek Chauvin, the Minnesota police officer convicted of killing George Floyd. His bias is immediately evident in the framing of the two articles' headlines. When he's talking about the Renee Good article with the protesters, he uses the headline, I quote, "ICE protesters put lives at risk, not just theirs." In contrast, the article following her murder, in support of Jonathan Ross, the ICE agent, he frames it, quote, "The FBI must not let ICE agents become the new Derek Chauvin." Now, to understand why this is steeped in bias, we have to understand framing. And our Converging media book says that framing relies on the notion that we classify, organize, and interpret things into certain schemas, frameworks to simplify the complex. And that's exactly what he did. Instead of sticking to professional duties of a journalist, he's using the frames of both of these headlines to create culpability in the protesters, while also asking the government to not have Jonathan Ross be responsible for shooting Renee Good. The second instance of bias that I found when reviewing the two articles is that in the first article, Marcus writes, "The purpose of Good and her comrades was to create confrontation with law enforcement," and that's exactly what happened. However, in the second article, he writes, "No sooner had Wednesday's tragic shooting occurred than the Minneapolis mayor and famed BLM kneeler Jacob Frey come out to say it was murder. Frey didn't wait for evidence, much of which is on video." Now, his bias aligns with Noam Chomsky's 5 filters of the mass media machine, where he discusses the 4th filter, flack. Flack is when the story is inconvenient for the powers that be, you'll see the flack machine in action, discrediting sources and diverting the conversation. When Marcus wrote the first article on January 8th, he assumes the intentions of the protesters and their views on the law enforcement to be confrontational with zero evidence, no sources to cite. He didn't speak to any protesters, at least they aren't mentioned in this article, but he leans on his bias and lack of context to draw these conclusions that will cast doubt on the protesters' cause. Additionally, the second article exemplifies diverting the conversation by using suggestive framing like "didn't wait for evidence, much was on video." The crux of Marcus's article is that the Minnesotanites don't view Renee's Good tragedy the way that he views it, then they should be discredited. They should not be taken seriously because they are confrontational. Lastly, the final link that I use to identify Marcus's bias in the articles relates to Chomsky's 5th filter, the common enemy. To manufacture consent, you need an enemy. A common enemy, a boogeyman to fear, helps corral public opinion. In the January 10th article, Marcus writes, "We defended Daniel Penny for his act of bravery in New York City subway car. We defended Kyle Rittenhouse, who used lethal force defensively." However, in the January 8th article, where he's talking about the protesters, he uses 2 quotes I'll highlight. "The unwillingness of these police forces to punish direct action protesters has sent a clear message to the Antifa types that streets belong to them, as well as left-wing protesters, have to understand that it's not the job of law enforcement to allow them to commit crimes just because they think their cause is just. After all, pretty much everyone thinks their cause is just. Frames the anti-ICE protesters as committing crimes because they think their cause is just, while praising Daniel Penny and Kyle Rittenhouse for their bravery. He doesn't question if their cause is just. He doesn't offer the same criticism for their actions as he does with the protesters. Marcus biases evidence here when he creates a distinction between those who share his views and those who don't. Now, granted, David Marcus wrote both of these articles in the opinion section of Fox News' site. But it's important for us to have media literacy. And media literacy can be defined as the process of critically analyzing media content by considering its particular presentation, its underlying political or social messages, and its media ownership or regulation that may affect the type of content we receive. So with careful analysis and curiosity, we all can sharpen our media literacy blade and recognize, challenge, and call out media biases in all mediums. So thank you for watching. See you on the next video. Citations in the description.